sworn, please.
You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Good morning, Dr. Isen.
Good morning.
If you wouldn't mind, could you state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Rena Isen, RenaIsen.
And Dr. Isen, where are you employed?
I'm employed at Middle Tennessee Mental Health Institute.
And what is that?
It is a state ran psychiatric facility, public psychiatric facility.
Okay. And what do you do for them?
I'm a psychologist there.
Okay. And how long have you been in that position?
I've been there 6.5 years.
Okay. And what types of things do you do for, I guess they call it MTMHI for short. Yeah. So what types of things do you do for them?
I do forensic evaluations that are ordered by the court. That's most of my work there. I also do a little bit of individual and group therapy.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your educational background.
I have a doctorate in psychology from Xavier University.
Okay. And when did you receive that doctorate?
I received it in 2013.
Okay. And prior to working for MTMHI, what types of things did you do?
I worked in the prison system as a psychologist for 5 years. I also did outpatient therapy in the community mental health centers. That was the bulk of my work.
Okay. And do you hold any particular licensure in the state of Tennessee?
If you really try to speak into the microphone.
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a licensed psychologist.
Okay. And do you hold any particular certifications in the state of Tennessee?
Yes, I'm certified as a forensic evaluator.
And you said that as part of your jobs at MTMHI, you do court-ordered mental health evaluations.
Yes.
Has that ever required you to testify before?
Yes.
About how many times would you say?
About 50 times.
Okay. And what courts have you been qualified in as an expert?
Davidson County Court, I think this court exactly. Shelby County, the court in Franklin County, the one in Murfreesboro, I forget what county that is. That's all I can remember.
Your Honor, at this time I would tender Dr. Isen as an expert in forensic psychology.
Anything you want to say? Member of the jury, Dr. Isen will be declared an expert in the field of forensic psychology, and I'll charge you on that later.
Dr. Isen, I want to ask you a little bit about MTMHI. And I would say the full name, but I get tongue-tied every time I try to say it fully. So, but for MTMHI, what type of facility is it? Is it a hospital? What's it?
Yeah, it's a psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
So people with mental illness come there for treatment and then also for forensic evaluations.
Okay. And do they have like an inpatient wing?
It's all inpatient.
It's all inpatient.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so at some point in time, when someone comes in for you to conduct an evaluation, what types of things are you looking for when the court asks you, as in this case, to render an opinion about whether someone could appreciate wrongfulness, mm-hmm. or whether they suffer from a severe mental illness? What steps do you take?
Well, the first step is determine if they actually have a mental illness. So a lot of that is going to come from records, and maybe they had treatment records or different interactions with the police, whatever is available that has an indication that they might have a mental illness prior to the crime occurring. Sometimes that might involve talking to family members or close friends, things of that nature. After we establish that a person does have a mental illness, then we get into the details of the crime that occurred. So we ask them about what they were thinking, what happened. We do some psychological testing as well. I left that part out to kind of indicate what their thinking is like, if they have a mental illness, what their intelligence level is sometimes. And then we look at other available records to kind of figure out what happened at the time of the crime. So that might involve police reports, investigative reports, things of that nature.
All right. And do you look at videos sometimes if they're available?
Yes, if they're available.
Okay. And you talked about meeting with someone you're evaluating. When you do that at MTMHI, are they, during the evaluation, are they inpatient?
Yes. When they're court ordered for an evaluation, they come to us for 30 days, up to 30 days, so usually around the 30-day mark. But by the time the 30th day ends, we have to send them back. But they're with us, they stay with us the whole time, and our staff will keep an eye on them the whole time and write notes about what's going on with them while they were there 24 hours a day.
And was that the case with Mr. Reinking? During the evaluation, was he being held there inpatient?
Yes.
Likewise, with your engagement with Mr. Reinking, was that pursuant to a court order?
Yes.
So you've never been hired by either side to come in and give an opinion in this case, is that correct?
Correct.
So, do you recall when it was when you were asked to provide an opinion about Mr. Reinking?
I don't recall when I got the court order. I know he first arrived to our facility on July 12th, 2018.
Okay. And at that point in time, did you have any collateral source documents or information when you first got there?
Yes.
Okay. And what information did you have in reference to Mr. Reinking at that time?
I had affidavits, some records from the mental health cooperative, records from his mental health records from jail. I had the Metro Police Investigative Supplement Report. I believe at that time I also had the police reports that he had when he was in Illinois from contacts with the police, an arrest warrant from the District of Columbia when he was trespassing on White House grounds. His attorney at the time also provided me some notes about his meetings with Mr. Reinking. His attorney at the time was Jonathan Wing. I also, I believe, had some letters that Mr. Reinking had wrote to the court. Those were dated May 9th, 2018 and May 10th, 2018. Yeah, that's all I had at the time.
Okay. And with those things, in this instance, did you review those before you started interacting with Mr. Reinking, or is that something you would do during?
That's typically something I review right before, if I have time. But typically I would do that before.
All right. And so, now, just to be clear, that's what you had initially, but at different points during your evaluation, did you receive additional information?
Yes.
And what was that additional information?
I received video surveillance of the shooting at the Waffle House. I also received, right before he left, I received journal entries from his personal journal prior to the shooting. And then recently I received more journal entries. Apparently there was a lack, something happened with communication, because I received an email during the evaluation. All of the journal entries our staff at the hospital did, but somehow I only got part of them. So those were resent to me, and I reviewed all of those recently within the last 3 weeks. And I also received YouTube videos that Mr. Reinking created prior to the shooting. I received those earlier this week.
And in relation to the videos, did you receive some YouTube videos back at the time?
Yes.
And so, do you remember approximately how many?
I believe there were 3.
Okay. And then, as it related to the ones you said you just recently received, about how many were those?
I did not count. There were a lot. It was over 20. I would say between 20 and 30.
Okay. So, describe for the jury how these interactions with Mr. Reinking would go when you start meeting with him. Like, how are they set up logistically?
Logistically. So I met with him at least 2 times a week by myself. So me and him would sit in a room that we have on the unit and talk mostly about what happened around the time of the crime and some about his history. We also once a week meet with him as a group. All of our clinical staff meet with him as a treatment team. So that's in a bigger conference room. We all sit down. So that includes me, the psychiatrist that we had at the time. One nurse always sits in, his social worker, and our treatment team coordinator. So we would do that once a week as well and talk about his treatment while he was there, his treatment goals, and any concerns that he had.
The meetings that you had with Mr. Reinking, where it was just you and Mr. Reinking, how many of those were there?
I know I met with him at least 2 times a week, so that would be at least 8, but I'm not sure how many exactly.
Okay. And how long would those meetings typically last?
With him, it would typically last at least 45 minutes. Some of them were more than that. Some of them were an hour, hour and a half.
Okay. And the meetings that you said with the team, the treatment team, how many of those do you recall happening?
We are required to do it once a week, so that would be 4.
Okay. So, did you come to a point after conducting those meetings and reviewing all that information where you formed an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Reinking suffers from a severe mental illness?
Yes.
What was that opinion?
That he suffered from schizophrenia.
Okay. And what was that opinion based upon?
So that was based upon his presentation while he was there, his behavior while he was with us, also reviewing his records as well. So he had multiple symptoms of schizophrenia, more than what's required to meet the diagnosis. He had delusions, so that means that he believed things that weren't actually true. He had hallucinations, so he was hearing and seeing things that weren't really there. He also had some disorganized thoughts, so his thoughts were scattered or confused, not really focused. There was some odd behavior. He also had what we call inappropriate affect, which is when the facial expression does not match what a person's talking about. He also had some unpredictable agitation, and he believed that he was getting special messages from random things in the environment. So things like TV shows that he would see, movies, videos he watched online, certain words people were saying around him. certain street signs he saw when he was in the community. If a certain car passed by him, he would see these random things and think that it had special significance just for him or special meanings just for him.
Now, do you recall specifically what going back, and let's break this down, going back to the delusions.
Mm-hmm.
What were the delusions?
He had many delusions, quite a few, and there was a progression that we could see over time, starting in 2015. There was a lot of detail in that from his journal entries and his YouTube videos. In 2015, he was reporting in his YouTube videos about having alien encounters. That is a delusion that was very consistent up until it continued while he was with us, that he was communicating with aliens, that he was helping them with the war they were fighting with another alien species. He also started believing in 2015 that Taylor Swift was stalking him. He thought she was his girlfriend, leaving him hidden messages, leaving him clues about where to find him. He believed that some of these messages were her trying to convince him that he was homosexual and that he was a woman. He would collect these different clues that he thought she was leaving and try to find her in various places in the community. One of those times that he did that, he asked his parents for help. And so his parents were driving him around town looking for Taylor Swift, and they eventually contacted the authorities and got help in getting him psychiatrically hospitalized. So he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in 2016. Those records indicate that he had delusions while he was there. In 2017, on June 16th, a police report shows that he showed up at work and was wearing a pink dress and holding a rifle. He yelled obscenities at his coworkers and then left. Later that day, the police were called again because he showed up at a public pool wearing a pink dress and took it off in the pool wearing only his underwear. And he argued with the lifeguards and yelled at them that he was a man and showed them his genitals. His delusions, 2 days later, he reported in his journal that someone broke into his apartment. That was the first mention that I saw of him, saying that he felt like he was in danger, that someone was breaking in. He said that when they did break in, he was drugged and sexually assaulted. And he reported the belief that the whole community was involved in this. In July 2017, he was arrested on White House grounds. And he told the security guard he wanted to talk to the president. The next month, he reported in a video that someone broke into his apartment again and went through his computer. In November 2017, he reported in his journal he's being followed online and in person by a large group of people. So he made his first mention of the Waffle House in a journal entry in November 26, 2017. He said a woman said something to him that was similar to what he said out loud in his apartment by himself. In December 2017, he wrote some concerning things in his journals. He said that he'd still been communicating with aliens with telepathy, as well as multiple famous women. He reported that the aliens told him he was special and would unite all of the species in the universe. And then he also reported that the government was making attempts to kill him. And so there was this progression of him feeling like he was in more danger. He said that there were attempts made to kill him every day. He said they were poisoning him, trying to shoot at him, but the aliens were stopping it every time. And he reported concern that the aliens might not be able to stop them every time like they had been. In December 6, 2017, he said in his journal that a waitress at the Waffle House was in the Secret Service and was giving him clues about Taylor Swift. 2 days later, he reported that all of the people at the Waffle House were either in the CIA or the FBI, and that they poisoned his steak. On December 13th, 2017, he reported that a man at the Waffle House had a gun and wanted to shoot him, and then another one was the mayor. And then one of his last journal entries, he reported that someone broke into his apartment again, and that was in January 2018.
When someone with schizophrenia suffers these delusions, do they believe them wholeheartedly?
Yes.
And specifically, what's the definition of delusion?
Believing something that is not true
And
against available evidence.
In the context of schizophrenia, is it something that even with, if a person's shown contrary proof, that they still wholeheartedly believe their delusion?
Yes.
And you made one statement about Mr. Reinking. You started out talking about some of his delusions, and you said it continued even when he was with us.
Yes.
So just to be clear, does that mean when he was during his evaluations?
Yes.
Are these things that you witnessed yourself?
Yes.
Were they witnessed also by other individuals on the treatment team or at MTMHI?
Yes.
And at one point, was he ever witnessed by someone talking to the TV?
I don't recall
If
that.
you remember, if you would refresh your recollection, look in page 11 of your report. Block quote at the top.
Yes. Yes. Yes, one of our staff reported that he was talking to the TV and he changed his voice multiple times and seemed to be talking about the shooting as though he was someone else. And he was saying things like, "Why did you make me do it?" And I didn't want to do it.
So, fair to say, these delusions progressed and were present even through your treatment of him, or evaluation of him rather, at MTMHI.
Yes.
So, and we'll come back to the delusions in a moment, but let's talk about hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what indications or evidence were there of him suffering hallucinations?
There were multiple times while he was at our hospital that he would talk out loud in his bedroom when no one else was around, as if he was having conversations. And he told us at one point that he had conferences with the aliens about different things that needed to happen. That's the only one I can recall. That's the only thing I can recall while he was at our hospital.
All right. What about prior to, like looking at the information that you reviewed?
Yeah, prior to, he reported hearing the voice of aliens in his journals. He reported communicating with them, having conversations with them. He reported hearing the voice of different female celebrities. He reported seeing someone he referred to as his wife, that he believed he was married to some kind of supernatural being that was a shapeshifter, and so he reported seeing her at one point, and she looked like Maleficent. That's all I can recall.
Okay. And you mentioned disorganized thoughts. Were there any particular ones that stood out to you that you were able to either observe or review from the materials?
Yeah, when he was at MTMHI, when he was talking, he tended to kind of jump around and lose focus when he was talking from topic to topic. I can't remember any particular thought. It was pretty consistent that he communicated in that way.
Okay. So, and going back to the delusions, were you able to talk to Mr. Reinking about his actions on the evening of April 22nd, 2018?
Yes.
And based on what you reviewed, what was his thinking on that evening? What happened on that evening?
His thinking was that he was in danger. He believed he had been stalked and harassed, and multiple attempts were made to kill him. He believed that it was this unknown entity that was kind of out to get him. He thought he had been drugged, sexually assaulted, his apartment broken into multiple times, like I said, attempts on his life. So he believed that he was acting in self-defense.
And was there any event that happened earlier that evening that you recall him mentioning or writing about from what you reviewed that triggered those fears to escalate?
Yes. He reported that his apartment was broken into that day.
Okay. And what caused him to go when he did?
He reported that he got a message from God telling him to carry out the shooting.
And do you recall how he said he received the message?
He said it was just kind of a thought that was put into his head, like it was a direct kind of implant from God.
And you've been able to review the surveillance video from the Waffle House, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were able to note from that video that what he was wearing.
Yes.
Based on what information you have about that night for Mr. Reinking, was there any significance to him as to why he was dressed the way he was?
Yes. He said that God told him to wear that particular jacket, and he reported embarrassment of going out in public wearing it, but he said that's the direction that he got from God.
And you said something about Mr. Reinking saying that he was acting in self-defense. Has he ever talked to you? Did he ever talk to you about why he was there, about why he felt like he had to do what he did at the Waffle House?
He reported the belief that the people at the Waffle House were involved. He said in his journal entries that they were CIA and FBI agents, and that some of the staff poisoned his food multiple times.
Okay. Did he persist in his belief while you were talking to him that he was acting in self-defense?
Yes.
You said he wrote to the court, wrote some different letters at different times while he was in your care, correct?
No, not
Or
while
prior
he was
to.
in our care, prior to.
Prior to,
yes.
sorry.
Mhm.
So, at some point, were you able to form an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Reinking could appreciate that his actions on the night of April 22nd, 2018 were wrong?
Yes, I did.
And what is that opinion?
That he did not believe they were wrong.
Why?
He believed his life was in danger and he was acting in self-defense. And he also believed that he got the command from God to do it.
Now, from watching the video and the information you reviewed, you're aware that Mr. Reinking, after he committed the acts at the Waffle House, fled.
Yes.
Does that in any way affect your opinion, the fact that he fled, affect your opinion that he could not appreciate what he was doing was wrong?
It is not. It's definitely something I took into consideration, but I still came to the conclusion that I did.
And from Mr. Reinking's perspective, why run?
He reported the belief that the police were involved in the attacks against him. So it would make sense for him to run when he heard the sirens coming. I think prior to the shooting, his behavior indicates that he wasn't very concerned about the police coming or being arrested. There was not, it did not appear to be any plan as far as making a quick getaway. He didn't have any clothes on or shoes on. He didn't have any with him. After the shooting, he left his vehicle at the scene, and then he went home and showered, is what he reported. So his behavior indicated that he wasn't concerned about them coming. He did report that he didn't believe they would care about the shooting. He didn't believe that they would respond, and that was based on his experience with the police before, when he had called the police multiple times to report that people were harassing him and stalking him, and they didn't do anything. So he reported the belief that he did not think they would be concerned about that as well.
One moment, Your Honor.
All right.
Those are my questions.
Ms. Norman, do you want to go for a little bit and then take a mid-morning break, or would you just like to take it a little early so you don't get interrupted? Because it's 9:45, so either way you want to go, so we'll do it.
Judge, I can do it either way. I can get started with her and take a break.
All right, we'll go ahead and get
I
started.
will probably go past the mid-morning break, so.
Pardon?
I said I will go past the mid-morning break. I don't want to inconvenience anyone.
Do y'all need a break at this point? Any other? All right, well, let's go until about 10 or so, if we can find a convenient place to stop.
And Judge, feel free to stop me if I keep talking past that time.
Oh, you know I will.
I know you will. I'm not worried about that part. Good morning, Dr. Isen. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Okay. I want to go back through a few things. Obviously, you work at MTMHI as a psychologist. In April 2018, how long had you been there?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And how many assessments like this one had you done before at that point?
I mean, I get 2 a week typically, so Probably at least 200.
Okay. And on the forensic evaluation team, who are the people that are involved?
So with the forensic evaluation, that was conducted by me and Dr. Kovach, the other psychologist there.
And that's Dr. Ed Kovach, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how long had he been at NTMHI?
Over 20 years.
Okay, so kind of definitely your senior, is that right?
That is correct.
And he has actually since retired from NTMHI,
Yes,
but he had been there for a very long time, is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay. And is there also a social worker that's involved?
Yes,
And in this particular case, was it Richard Selikoff?
yes,
And that social worker, part of his responsibilities is to assist with gathering information and things like that.
correct.
Okay. And in this particular case, Mr. Selikoff, he's the one that reached out to the district attorney's office about the journals.
Correct.
And you've referenced journals a couple times during your testimony already. And so that was, I believe it was July 30th, 2018. He had called me the week before, and he requested of our office whether or not we had located a journal.
Yes,
So that was not something that the district attorney's office had and provided to you and said, please review this. It was the other way around,
correct.
which that does not always happen, correct?
Not always, no.
And so he made a specific request for journal entries, and I contacted the investigators to see if we had anything. There was no written journal, but there were some files on a hard drive that were labeled journals. And so those typed journals were provided to MTMHI,
Yes,
correct? And there were 73 individual files, correct?
I did not count.
And you, for whatever reason, there was some snafu at MTMHI, but you only received approximately 27 of those files initially.
Yes,
And you said that you did not receive those until right before Mr. Reinking was leaving, right?
yes, that's correct.
And Dr. Isen, we met a few weeks ago, and you indicated that it was sometime after August 9th that you would have reviewed the 27 journal entries that you reviewed.
Yes,
Which again, I didn't send them until July 30th because I just got the request. And the 27 journal entries that you reviewed was probably, I don't know, 70 something pages of typed journal entries, but the total was closer to 300. Is that correct?
pages?
Yes.
It was a large stack.
Okay.
I would take your word on that.
So the total amount of information that was sent, that was requested by your office, it was voluminous, correct?
Correct.
And there was a significant portion that you did not review prior to issuing your opinion in this case, correct?
The portion that I did not receive?
Well, it was sent.
Right, but
I'm not
I
sure
did
why
not
you
receive
didn't
it.
receive
I don't
it.
know why either. But yes, that portion I was not able to review because I did not have it.
Okay. So in making your opinion in this case, your October 15th, 2018 report, you're saying you did review the journal entries that you received from your office. And again,
Correct.
whatever that snafu was, but you were missing a large number of them.
Correct.
Okay. When you made your opinion October 15th, 2018, at that point you said that you had reviewed the video surveillance. Is that right?
Yes.
But when you actually met with Mr. Reinking initially, you had not reviewed the video surveillance, correct?
I do not know at what point I reviewed it. I know I didn't have it. It wasn't in the initial materials that I received.
So when did you receive the video surveillance?
I believe it was sometime during that first 30 days he was there. I believe the outpatient evaluator, Dr. Woods, I believe, sent it to me.
Okay, and so you're talking from July 12th to August 12th,
Yes,
sometime during then.
I believe so, yes.
But you don't know exactly when you received it.
No,
Do you know if you spoke to Mr. Reinking after you received it about the incident?
I don't recall.
So it's possible that you never spoke to Mr. Reinking about the incident after you reviewed the video surveillance.
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. And the last time that you spoke with Mr. Reinking about the incident was on August 6th of 2018, correct?
I don't believe so. He had the second hospitalization on August 23rd, from August 23rd to October 15th. So I believe we spoke about it during then.
You spoke to Mr. Reinking about the shooting at the Waffle House.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, and if you did speak to him about it, you would have documented that in a report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And your final report, you would document any time that you spoke with Mr. Reinking about this incident,
In the
correct?
final report, I'm not sure. It would definitely be in a progress note, though, if I talked to him about it.
Okay, and let's talk about that a little bit. So, a progress note.
Yes.
Explain what you mean by that.
Every time one of our staff, one of our clinical staff interviews him, we write a note that goes into his chart.
Okay, and so you do individual meetings with him, correct?
Correct.
The jurors said they can't meet on it.
So sorry.
And so when you do an individual meeting, you write a progress note. It's an individual progress note of yours.
Yes.
And the other psychologists on the evaluation team, they would write an individual progress note when they meet with Mr. Reinking separately.
Correct.
And then explain that process of who's in charge of writing the final report. Is one of the psychologists chosen to be a lead?
It was collaborative. I believe Dr. Kovac wrote the history part, and then I wrote the rest.
Okay, so you're saying it was collaborative with Dr. Kovac,
Yes.
that you were not lead, nor was he lead.
Correct.
It was both of you.
Correct.
And this final report for October 15th, 2018, did you draft that report or did Dr. Kovac draft that report?
It was collaborative.
Okay, so you're saying that Dr. Kovac was actively involved in creating this report.
Yes.
And so how did that work?
I honestly don't remember that long ago.
Well, I mean, is one person typing and the other person sitting next to you telling you what to type? How does that work that you both write something together?
We both write parts and then combine them, and we both review it and make edits.
Okay. And so which parts of this report did Dr. Kovac write?
You're talking about the second report?
October 15th, 2018, that's your final report with the opinion that you are here today testifying about. Correct?
I mean, I have two final reports.
You have
But
two
yes,
final
I'm
reports.
testifying about them both.
Judge, may we approach just very briefly?
All right. Members of the jury, Norman preempted me. I was about ready to take a break, and she took my thunder away from me. But be that as it may, it is about that time, and we're going to do that. And I've got a little matter I want to address with the attorneys and stuff. Anyway, so just put your notebooks in your chair and go and relax for a few minutes. Please do not discuss anything about what's transpired in this courtroom. Let's keep your thoughts to yourself. Remain on tonight. We'll be back here in about 15 minutes. Be seated for a minute. Dr. Isen, just out of an abundance of caution, I know that defense counsel has spoken with you about this. My understanding, you gave two reports, one in August and one in October. And one of them primarily focused on competency and the other one on insanity. Or did they both?
They both focus on insanity.
Okay. During your testimony, although you got two reports, and I'm sure that some of the information you may have relied upon in forming your opinions, both as to competency and insanity were used, right? I mean, some information bled over to both opinions.
Right.
The important thing I want to reiterate, and I'm sure it's already been advised, that was reinforced to you this morning, is there is to be no reference to or consideration of competency in your testimony here today. So to the extent that either or both of these reports reference competency, you were to ignore your opinions as a competency or any of your working with Mr. Reinking as it related to competency training, whatever it may have been. Okay? Any information that is mutual to both, you can rely upon, but you only address it as it relates to the sanity issue.
Okay.
Just as far as this jury is concerned, there is no competency questions, all right?
Okay.
Is that?
And Judge, if I may, so I
Sure.
can clarify that line of questioning that I was asking.
Okay.
May I ask Dr. Isen a
Yeah,
couple questions?
yeah.
Dr. Isen, so I was asking you questions, and I was referring to the October 15th, 2018 report.
Okay.
And I realized that as I was asking you those questions, you were considering two separate reports, and Judge had already made a ruling about the prior report, which is why I stopped so we could clarify this. Did Dr. Kovach write any of the October 15th, 2018 report, or were you referring to the August 9th, 2018 report?
I was referring to the August 9th.
Okay, and so you said the history, which my question, like I said, I was referring to the final report, which I considered to be October 15th, 2018, because that's the one that gives your opinion regarding insanity.
Okay.
And I was not referring to the August 9th. So Dr. Kovach did not write any of the October 15th, 2018.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay. And I will clarify
Just
that.
clarify the date of the report, right? that you-
Yes, I will refer to it as the October 15th, 2018 report only. And I will not be asking you questions about the August 9th, 2018 report.
Okay.
And if I were to, I would ask permission of the court,
Okay.
just so that we're all on the same page.
All right.
Judge, I want one thing on the record. She made a finding, there is information in both reports about sanity. So if the state asks her a question that requires her to answer from one report or the other, as long as it doesn't touch on competency, she should be allowed to answer that question. She shouldn't be given some instruction from the state, because the court has not ruled that one report can't come in and one can, and that's a misinterpretation.
I don't think the court's ruled that either report comes in.
Or just even be discussed. I mean, so I just want her to be, I don't want her to feel like she's overly prevented from relying on any information or finding that's referenced in either report, so long as it does not in any way reference competency.
I mean, the history that he gave as to both reports, I think can be referenced. There is in the August 9th report, addresses both insanity defense, although I haven't read it in detail, and there's a section addressing competency. But yes, I mean, in terms of her ultimate conclusions or opinions as it relates to the issue of on sanity, she would be allowed to consider the history of anything that she obtained, just as well as all the other historical information she got from other sources. But again, it's limited to its relation to the sanity issue, nothing to deal with competency.
Correct.
So I haven't read the details of the report. I don't know if there's independent things that she considered only for the competency, and to the extent that that is so, it's not to be addressed. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, sir.
And you know, we both all know that competency and sanity are two entirely different things, and some things that she considered would only be considered for competency purposes. That's what we got to avoid bleeding into her testimony that's being presented here today.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
But just, when the jury comes back, I will clarify that the October 15th, 2018 report, that she wrote that was not a
Right.
record of that.
That's fine. And we'll just pick back up right there. All right? Anything else at the moment? About 10 minutes of real time, not my time.